now. All right. But yeah, you say that you leveled up or you've gone through certain experiences, but you still move like, or you might still even feel like and then trying to figure out for yourself. I,
I like this topic a lot. Once I came to the conclusion that all the expectations that I had for the world and for people were incorrect and they're based off of false pretenses, I chose to, well, not just choosing, I also got help from you guys as well, but I decided, okay, that I need to change my whole perception on what I expect. And I'd have to completely alter that and start to build a new framework around expectations, right? And then um, what I realized is that I need to mesh my expectations with reality if I really want to be able to predict things correctly. And like you were saying, making a plan, right? Building that plan for a suitable amount of time so it doesn't run out, and you are able to continuously build on that plan and keep it moving, right? That plan has to be that has to coincide with reality. You can't just build up a plan that you think is gonna work, but really doesn't match anything that's going on. It's just gonna fail, right? If you want something that's gonna be successful and be beneficial for those that are inside of that plan, you have to be able to really expect and predict things correctly. And that's kind of one thing that I was even seeing in things that because I've been kind of trying to get into business and looking at and making predictions and making a plan for business. You really have to be able to see into the future, right, and really understand why you're making that prediction and the basis and the pretenses for that plan and the things that are going on, right? And I came to another conclusion that um because all of these things sit on laws and they sit on universal principles, where you really have to um, make sure that those are interwoven into your plan, right? A lot of times when it comes to like being in school, they don't really teach you that. They don't really say, okay, you need to use this type of understanding to make it give you this type of outcome. They might do that with like mass per se, for instance, right? And that's kind of also came to me with like med mass, where you have to make sure you're using a certain chart or a certain formula in order to create an outcome. And when it comes to reality, reality is always going to be what it is. Um, you cannot alter it for your benefit, right? It's always going to be what it is, and you could only work with it to get the best possible outcome that you can in that moment. But I want to give thanks and thank you for that.
Uh, Brother Zach, you want to jump in?
Greetings and salutations, Master Middle.
Peace, peace, peace.
Yeah. Man, this makes me think of something that I've been saying since I was 5 years old. It has to be in you and not on you. Oh gosh.
From that young.
I'm gonna put it back. I'm gonna borrow. It'd be like both of us. You know what I'm saying? Oh man, but it's one of them things which you just were saying, even the shedding your skin, like it has to be some type of movement. It has to be some type of work. And so many times people even will come into our mood trying to study, but yet still holding on to things that some of their old habits or some of the things that they used to do because since I'm over here, I feel like I'm now enlightened. I feel like now I'm still moving where I want to be. But you know what? I'm gonna hold on to going to church. I'm still gonna hold on to doing some of the things that I used to do, just in case. Because now, really, in essence, it's better to dance with the devil I know than the one that I don't know. Because if I fully commit to something, if I fully invest myself into something, then I'm going to change. I don't know really what, and just like Brother Raheem was saying, it's like trying to predict the future. One now, I can't predict what's going to happen if I fully commit to this. I can predict what happens if I still hold on to some of the same values and some of the same ethics that I used to have. I can kind of predict, when some pain is going to come and when some joy is going to come and how I want to do it. But in essence, what happens is many try to open up new doors with old keys. As we have learned, it's your ethics is what powers the key. Now, how are you not going to change some of the values or the ethics or the principles that you stand on, but still trying to get to a different destination, or trying to unlock new doors, but you're still doing the same thing that you've been doing, even though you're still just trying to read a book, or you still I'm showing up on Clubhouse. Oh yeah, I listen to the podcast. Oh yeah, I listen to that. You listen to that, but now, or is there true change being made? And if you go back and you listen to the podcast on 57 with the Sabbath, and it was just talking about, even at the beginning, man, when you do one thing, when you eat, when you sleep, when it's just now making sure that one now is fully committed to one thing. And if you can fully commit yourself to one thing and then now implement that one thing, you're going to get an opportunity to show either what you have learned, you are implementing, or or you're just jaw jacking. And then, because the opportunity is going to arise, are you going to now go back to your old habits so you can try to predict what is going to happen, or are you going to implement that new thing that you have learned so that therefore now you can become unknown?
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, it goes back to, that wisdom you had, you were blessed with since 5 years old. It's got to be in you, not on you. And I think we do tend to rely on, I don't know why. Chief has said this many times too, like a lot of people's intuition is shot. And we try to rely on our intuition to say, I'm going to do this and this is how it's going to go. Like when you're planning things out, you plan things so tightly that you leave no room for, anything to happen, or you don't go into it with like a sort of flexible mind, like, oh, okay, all right, we're going this way now. All right. You're so gung ho on your plans, and it's sort of like it was one of the Bruce Almighty's, and I think he was saying one of the characters was like, I had all of these plans, and they were talking to Morgan Freeman, and they didn't know, who he was. So, spoiler alert, he was God. But she was saying I had all these plans, and he sort of chuckles, and he's like, "Your plans." But that's how life is sometimes. Like you have all these plans. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. And you don't expect there to be like a toll to pay, or a burn to go through in order to attain what you say you want. You expect things to go the way they go in your mind. And like, how many times does that happen? Like, how many times does it really go that way? You know what I mean? How many times do you have an encounter with someone and you walk away from it, and then you go to the shop, you go take a shower, and in the shower you're replaying the argument in your head, like should have said this, should have said that. So that sort of mentality of I can predict what's gonna happen. Like the only way you can predict what's gonna happen is if you're in a movie that has you playing the star and the villain, and you're the director, and you're the editor. Like you've got to be a total control freak for you to expect life to obey your whims, you know. And I'm making a distinction between obeying your whims and following the promise that was laid out in front of you. You know, when you put your expectation or your faith on that, you know that it's going to move. But even then, you can't expect it to play out a certain way. You know, you can't expect life to just say, oh, okay, all right, change the plans, everybody. Brother Zach says he doesn't want to get out of bed today, but he still wants to get paid. You know, so we got to make that happen. I don't know, send armored vehicle this way. Yeah, let them crash in his building. Yeah. That's good. You know, it's sort of like that. How much do you expect life to conform to, like, your lack of work? And even when you start working, it's gonna have to burn. If you do the workout, like Akizak was saying, if you do a workout and you do arms, but you always do arms and you always do the same routine every time, eventually you're gonna stagnate, you know. Meanwhile, you got these chicken legs and they can't hold up your upper body anymore, you know. But I'll I'll get off on that. But yeah, man, the planning piece is definitely important, but you got to be flexible. You know, you can't expect reality to conform to your expectation, especially if you've your expectation are based on like durational standards.
Peace, Adam, peace, everyone. I'm glad that you brought up flexibility because I was thinking when you're talking that being malleable is so important with change, and it kind of relates to the mix that we've done today. And I built on Chief's episode of jealousy and sisterhood, and he was saying that the resistance of change, even in your womanhood, like the from the virgin to the native to the crone, um, it actually harms you. So I was thinking, like, I was relating it to music, and some people are like, oh, I love music in this time, and they just want to stay in that time frame, and it kind of leaves an empty void. Like, what if you were to connect with the younger generation and through music, and then now they have an elder, or now they have some guidance, and I was just thinking about how it relates to that, and if we come out of ourselves when we're resisting change, we realize that there's a void there. There's a void to be filled in all stages of life that we already pre-chose. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that even made me think of when you just said flexibility and how one can get stiff and rigid in their psychology and not being able to problem solve in a sense of moving forward. You know what? There's an old show. She says more than one way to skin a cat, and there's more than one way to shoot a cat. But if you don't open yourself up to the different ways and the different possibilities, which ultimately saying that, you know what, there's an old saying, the key to life is to die before you actually die, only to discover that there is no death. You have to, the chief has said before like, you got to kill yourself out of one reality, only to rebirth yourself into a new. But if I don't want to die. I want to hold on to all the things that I have. I don't want to let go. I don't want to, and maybe it's even a connection to a materialistic world that says that this is what I should have and what I shouldn't have. But you're telling me, even when he was speaking on Eva the other day, spirit precedes the physical, or whatever. And it made me even start to think about, even when he's speaking of religion and how God was taken out of the school, but not religion. And like, if a group of people were going to help a third world country, quote unquote, or whatever the case may be, one would then offer them an education, in a sense, so that one can now problem solve and one can now start to do for self. But at the same time, do you really want somebody to do for self, or do you really want them to just be trained? Right? And a lot of times now it's like, can you unlearn to relearn? But now that's going to even cause work, right? It's going to cause one to now dig. And how many times have you seen, even when people come to our new, it's like, I'm looking at Chief now like a vending machine. So, what's the answer to this? What's the annexation? What's the annexation of Puerto Rico? That's what it is. All right, cool. But really, it's not becoming alive and active inside of them because they didn't do any work to dig for it to find it, right? There's a lot of shows, but there's so many shows, but there's so many. Yeah, but if you really wanted to get it for yourself, so that therefore you have it in order to now teach it, you're gonna go look for it. You're gonna go search for it. You're gonna go dig for it. You're gonna go start to try to connect it with things as you start to move throughout your day. So you're not just trying to regurgitate things that you've heard, but now if somebody asks you a question, well, how did you come to that? You can now start to relate that to different things that even in the shows or even that you see, that therefore now that you have it, as opposed to the training that one is given in order to now get a certain goal or a certain destination that somebody else wants you to be at, as opposed not one that you have really chosen for yourself. But now it comes a moment where it's like the 3 C's with one, let's make a choice to take a chance or your life will never change. It's like, what choice are you going to make in this moment that's going to say that, you know what, I'm going to release these old habits. I'm going to release the old me because it wasn't getting me anywhere but some anxiety, but depression, but some loneliness, but alone, of me saying I don't need nobody else, me saying I'm a woman, hear me roar, and I don't need anything. I can do it all myself, or I don't need any brotherhood, and I don't need anything of that nature. Are you willing to make a choice and say, you know what, I was going in the wrong direction, right? And now I got to take a chance because I don't know what's going to be on the other side of this, but I know that I can't keep going in the same direction that I was going in because I already know where it's getting. And I can't start to now blame anybody else. I have to now start to look at myself and say, yeah, I'm screwing this up. Because if I don't make that choice to take that chance, then I know that nothing is going to change, and it's just going to be a revolving door. And that was even said. Well, I'm
He's flowing, spitting hot fire.
Yeah, peace everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. But
Peace, you can be heard.
Peace. All right, cool. Good, thanks. Yeah, my connection's a little shabby. But this is a great topic again, man. You guys have really been hitting on some good points, the entire time, because change is a difficult one for people a lot of times because of a lot of the things that you all just mentioned, and there are 2 forms of perceived change that most people pick up on, and that's the external change and that's the internal change. And of course, the internal is what drives the external. But the thing is, like, if you're resistant to change, if you're stubborn in any sort of way, what ends up happening is that you get pushed from location to location without being prepared for it, because everything in the external environment is constantly changing. There's nothing that's sitting still. And if you have the patience to observe it, then you see the explosion of change all around you. Because if we think about something that like a Big Bang theory or something that changes with great explosion, like boom, all of a sudden something different. The only reason you notice that it changed with such vigor and excitement was because you were patient enough to watch it. So if something changes like that over a couple of seconds or over a couple of minutes or even an hour, we say, oh, it exploded with change. But there's things that change over decades like that. There's things that explode over the course of 100 years. And we just don't have the focus or the patience to watch that change. But it kind of goes to show that everything is changing, everything is moving. And what happens is, if you remain resistant to that, then you're just getting pushed around. So for instance, if I'm leaning against a chair and that chair is changing its form, its dimensions, its height, its width, its depth, and I'm leaning against it, then eventually my position will be moved, because what I was leaning against or relying on as being something that's continuous is changing. So therefore my position changes, and I may not even have the same support that I once had, because I'm not recognizing that I'm not separate from the change that's happening all around me. Because of my lack of patience, to me it seems like everything is standing still. Whereas when I recognize that there's particles all around me, and these particles affect the speed of certain things. Like, so I can be a fast particle, or I can be a light particle, or I can be a dense particle. So like if we have denser particles, they will affect the speed of light if a particle is dense, right? So that light could change me, that knowledge could change me and evolve me. But because of how dense I am, and because of how bound I am to this idea of being flesh and blood, then my change happens in a very, I don't want to just say slow, but it almost happens in a very painful sort of way, because I don't understand my fundamental property, if you will. But when I recognize that change that you all are speaking about, it happens first in the mind. It's where we say like mind over matter. Then what happens is that I become a conscious agent of the change that's around me and the change that I affect and the light that flows through me. And we call that free will, and free will is not just I can make a choice and I can do this. Free will is that I can freely will all of existence around me, because instead of being bounced around like a pool ball, you play pool and you're not really that good, and let's say you just go for the break, and you hit at the break and just see where everything lands. When you're not operating out of free will, that's pretty much how you're going through life. Everything's bouncing and moving around you, and these certain causes are creating these explosions of change around you, and you're just being bounced from place to place because you're not moving as a conscious agent within your mind, so that you can now affect change, as a free agent, and exert yourself onto the physical reality, as opposed to the physical reality exerting itself, onto you. So, it's just there's so much that could go into that. But like I said, we live inside of this entire grid of conceptual and physical and emotional and perceptive manipulation. And the truth is, like, inside of this grid, we call it a grid, but there's no rules really, and there's no defined parameters. It's like just stepping into a cage for a death match. There's no rule, there's no endpoint or anything like that. So everyone has an opportunity to play. Everybody has an opportunity to exert their will on reality however they feel, and they can exist within the moment, and they can become a small thing that becomes many things, or they can exist on a level of I'm just an atom and I'm just bouncing from atom to atom, as opposed to moving from atom to atoms. My one self is now projecting itself onto many selves, or to many things, or to many realities. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
You remind me of this brother. He got a bald head too. He say deep stuff just like you.
Yeah, Brother Zach.
That's his name. Yeah, Brother Zach. Good old Brother Zach.
Try to get to that level.
Yeah, well, it's interesting how you were saying like there's no rules to it, and just like something like a Big Bang, the slowness of it, and how long, based on our standards, how long it takes for something like that to occur, and I don't even want to say transpire, but just how long it takes for that process to go through its course, however long it takes or wherever it takes it. That is something like it reminds us, I think, of our own um the part of us that is finite, when really it should remind us of the part of us that's infinite. But we focus on the finite part, like, I don't have enough time to watch that. You out there looking at stars, they ain't doing nothing anyway. They ain't going nowhere. uh, but yeah, it's sort of like that. What do you expect? And I had a question actually for the chat, and it was based off of something that a very deep brother sitting right amongst us had said about training. You know, the training that you give people in educational systems. Um, like, what have we been trained, or what have you been trained to expect from life, or what have you been trained to expect from reality? You think about how we treat each other, how we treat our siblings, how we treat family members, how we treat men or women, how we treat opportunities, how we treat nature, how we treat animals. What is your expectation of life? Like, some people, when you say let's go out in nature, and say something is going to bite me or something is going to try to eat me. That's my expectation of nature, you know. And oddly enough, most horror movies that I know about take place in nature. Some lone cabin in the woods. You say, you ain't getting me. I'm staying right there in the city where it's safe. Or you may have children who only expect so much from their fathers because that's what society tells us. Either he's going to be gone and we won't see him, or he's going to be here and he's going to be our servant and buy us all the things we want when we want it. As long as we know when to cry and when to act like we respect them. Same thing with mothers. Mommy's going to do everything for me for the rest of my life. As long as I could charm her and make her smile, she'll just do it. How many things have we been trained to expect from reality, and are they in alignment with how life works, or are they in alignment with how Babylon works? So yeah, that was the question I wanted to pose.
Please. I think our expectation, well, one thing for me is the expectation, the perception of time. And that's what came up when Chief was speaking. And then your question, Mr. Miller, so I think we've been taught a certain perception of time, which ultimately affects what reality we're living in, or what we perceive as reality and what we experience as our expectations. And that's what came up when you asked that question.
And just being, I think the biggest thing for me is when one is being trained to say what they value, what is valued. And just like you said, of one almost telling you what you see, so you're not really leaning or standing on your creativity or your imagination. But more so, one now is telling you this is what that is. And really robs one of how they now can see and perceive the world. There's even a piece where I think great Amos Wilson said, one might get stuck into saying that they're a 5th grade teacher or a 6th grade teacher and miss the whole meaning behind, now you're not a 5th grade or a 6th grade teacher, you're just a teacher. And which means now you teach the person in front of you, as opposed to saying that you should be here, here, and here. And if you're not here, then now this person is just dismissed. And a lot of times it's what we are trained is, no, this is what I am. This is what you're going to do. Even certain phrases like time is money, right? So now you get into a rush of trying to become quote unquote successful, which somebody else has defined what success is, and not really sat down and saying, you know what, am I successful if I'm in nature, if I'm spiritual, if I'm, have a connection with the divine? Am I successful? Or am I not successful because this is what everybody else deems as successful is? Go get that bag. Man, I'm supposed to go get that bag. And if I don't have that bag, then I don't bring any value. even though a lot of the things that can be purchased is essentially worthless. Even though if I drive a vehicle off the lot and you're telling me that it's 90,000, and as soon as I drive it off the lot, it depreciates in value and it's not worth what you just sold it to me as, even though I ain't even drive it that far. Something has been off. Something is off, and now it's like, what is one anchored themselves to? What really here is valued, and then we start to see even where it's like, don't tell me what you value, show me your pocketbook, and then I'm gonna tell you what you value, right? You see entertainers making now 225 million or 200 or whatever just to entertain, or ultimately just to be a distraction. Whereas now, somebody who is teaching youth, somebody who is actually dedicated their lives to actually making the pouring into the youth and making them become productive, well, you start to see now what the value is placed on them, and really where everything is and how one wants to keep things moving forward. Now it's just a matter of, does one start to make it incumbent upon themselves to say, you know what, I can't, this can't go on. And do I really have free will, or am I just moving like an AI? I think that answered your question. I think I was all over the place, but yeah.
A little bit. But yeah, man, for sure. The expectations that you were talking about, and you said something very key, which was value. You know, what you value, it doesn't necessarily have like your life. You don't have to do everything while you're here. you know, you don't have to do every single thing while you're here. You don't have to do everything everyone tells you. You know, having a level of understanding in terms of going back to the internal, what it is that you've brought into this plane, and ultimately what it is that you were meant to express and experience. You can say yes or no to things based on whether or not they line up with that experience. You know, if you're truthful about it. You know, if someone says, you know, let's go down this dark alley and beat up this homeless dude and take whatever he's got, nah, that's not for me. you know, but there are people who do that. You know what I mean? And there are people who say, I'm going to distract this girl. You put that thing in a drink. You know, there are people who say, I don't want to do nothing but lay down all day. I'll get up when I'm hungry. You know, there are people who say, I'm going to work and I'm going to be successful and I'm going to really make something of myself, whatever that means, you know, or I'm really going to be successful and I'm going to master what it is that I proclaim to be my craft. I'm really going to work at it and push myself to the highest level. There's so many different possibilities and veins that you can take in this life, so many lanes that you can be in, you know. But those possibilities are sometimes what trip us out too, because we have when we have an abundance of choices, sometimes it confuses us. And if we're not standing on anything, like that saying, you know, if you don't know where you're going, any road would do. You know, it's sort of like that. You go anywhere, or you go where the wind blows you. You know, sort of like not sort of like, but exactly like what Chief Yuya was saying about the billiards reference. You know, I can't believe I just said billiards, but anyway, turning British. But yeah, emo.
Yeah, that was kind of fancy.
I mean,
Pants over there.
I guess it's because of who's in the room. You know, even Yakira stepped in. I had to, you know, step my game up. you know, peace, Ema. How you doing?
Peace, 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 God, peace, Master Menelec, and everyone in the space. this was, you said billiards. I thought you said billions. And I'm like, what does billions have to do with it?
That was a waste of fanciness.
Right. Oh, wait, I'm still Brooklyn. Pool is what I know, but billions.
Y'all need some culture in your life. That's what y'all need.
Apparently. In listening to everything that's been shared, and just reflecting on some of what I've been digesting all strong, between Chief Yuya's podcast segment that just spoke about confusion and the martyr complex, as well as what was shared on the interdimensional contracts and marriage, it really just made me think about how much of what we wind up with comes before we even got here. It's not necessarily by the doing of our hands, but it doesn't abdicate our responsibility to be accountable for it. And what I mean by it is that change, that transformation. And so when I look at just the title and what's been shared about going from looking at expectation versus reality, it's like, well, if I just take the message, right, or a piece of the message that says, well, in interdimensional contracts and marriage, Chief Yuya indicated that a lot of these contracts were formed before we were formed. These contracts are in our bloodline. So what am I to do with it? Or this really just supports that this is me. Just like I can't make myself any taller. I've researched the technology. It's not quite there yet. Just like I can't make myself any taller, maybe I can't change. And this is the evidence of it. Or accepting truth, right? Or the grace of truth. The fact that you can have people around you who earnestly love you enough to be honest and to connect with you in a fashion that allows for them to call out things in you that require evolution and change and growth, and to step into that and to let that expectation shift you and shift your reality so that when you look back, you can clearly see, how you've grown and how you've changed. Not because you're looking and tracking and monitoring, but when you look back, it's almost unrecognizable. So Aki Zach went so deep, I'm not even sure if that answers your question, Master Menelek, but it's definitely a bit of what I've been receiving while listening to you all. So give thanks. Oh, and billiards.
Yeah, don't worry, Emma. I actually just read this study. They're doing, test studies on knee implants. Yeah, so you could get your knee extensions in like 5 years. You might grow like 3 inches.
I'm cool.
Yeah, but Aki Zach was about to drop some more fortune cookies on us.
Nah, I was just gonna say, see, Kara, she knows who said you gotta be in you, not on you.
That's Chief Yuya. I would never make that mistake again. That was Chief Yuya. As quoted by Aki Zach many times.
If I wouldn't have spoke up and said anything, though, y'all would still been jacking my swagger.
You're gonna put it back. You're gonna be like both of them, brother.
You have a bunch of mustard stains on it.
Right. All used up. I was gonna turn it.
I was gonna wash it tomorrow, brother. Yeah,
but even I was just thinking of even when Chief was building on that on Friday, with just God has been taken out of the school, but not religion. And I was really thinking about that in the sense of like, okay, but there's supposed to be a separation of church and state, right? And ultimately one shouldn't have to impose. I'm guessing that one shouldn't have imposed your God onto everybody else. And in a sense, though, it's like, do you removing that aspect though, because now one will be removing what one necessarily will be anchored and rooted to, so that one now can't be swayed one way or another from their purpose, in a sense. But then even with like Emma Yakir was just speaking of, you know, I'm not going to get any taller. But now if I remove the God aspect from them, now it's like I'm going to remove and I'm going to say, I'm doing this. You know, it's because of my will, as opposed to saying that I'm anchored and rooted into something greater than myself. So now I'm gonna still give you religion though, and religion is bound to the state, or bound to these rules, right? Just even now thinking of what Chief was speaking about with being put into a cage, and there are no rules, but if I take you through the system is going to tell you these are the rules that you can fight by, and these are the rules, things that you should do, and the things that you shouldn't do. Even though I'm going to omit some information that says this was everything that was done in order to now gain where things are at now. Which then in turn would almost in a sense stump someone's growth in making some necessary changes in their life, because one hasn't yet gained the valuable information in order to make that necessary change. And I'm really just thinking out loud right now. So yeah.
Well, you know, to build on that, brother, like that's a good direction that you're going down in terms of like the schooling, because yeah, like I said, prayer was taken out, but you know, or you know, God was taken out more so, but religion was kept in, and it is similar to what you're saying in that what happens is that it's a war against parenting, right? Because if I take out spirit, if I take out God, but keep religion, and they kept religion in several different ways. One, you can take a class called World Religions, right? So you'll take this class, or you'll understand these different religions in the world, and you're taught that they're all pretty much the same. They all lead to the same place. So people say that all the time. Well, you know, there's only one God, and all religions basically, they come down to the same thing, and they all tell you the same thing. At the end of the day, you know, just be good to people and don't kill people, and that's not true. You know, some of those things that are common throughout religions existed before the religions. They were just common sense. You know, like what you reap, you shall sow, or what you sow, you will reap. That's just common sense. That's karma. You know, that's not a religious principle. Shouldn't kill people. These are not religious principles. So what happens is that once you keep the religion in there, it's easier to undermine it when there's no sort of spiritual or divine authority attached to it, or a divine or spiritual personality attached to it. It's like going into the Bible and having all of the different names of the different deities just converted to the word Lord. So now once I do that, I can undermine the placement and the authority of those particular deities and say, well, it's just one invisible sky god that you'll never see till you get to heaven, which doesn't make sense, and it's not even really technically in the book. And the reason that you know it's really a part of an agenda, because even in that environment, there are things that children learn that they never will use. So it's not like, you know, because like they teach you, like, basically, if it doesn't exist in a third dimensional reality, it's not real. There's no point in teaching it. So there's no point in world application. You know, the theorem of Banach Alago, right? Or no, Ala Ogulu, but not al-aqlu. You know, that's a functional analysis theorem, right? But you can't use any of these theorems. Like they're formulas and they're theorems based on things that are invisible. Like Whitney's embedding theorem is another one where it talks about how you can embed a manifold into higher dimensional space, right? These are things that are taught at the college level, you know, when you're taking higher level mathematics, but it's also taught that there's no real. So essentially, it's like spirit. It's like you're teaching spirit. You're teaching me something that you're acknowledging is real, but it's not real in the third dimensional reality. So what would be the difference between that and spirit and God? Wouldn't it be the same thing? These spiritual laws and spiritual rules that are not applicable to the third dimensional reality. You see, so they do recognize that there are things that are unseen that still have a measure of power, and there are theorems that are in mathematics that are abstract, you know, and your computer technology, every bit of computer technology is based on mathematical theorems, you know, so your abstract theorems, they really affect everything that you do in modern world, in modern life. And your abstract mathematical theorems are based on religious spiritual theories. You see, so it's I just say all that to say they do know it's real, but they know that they cannot truly control a young mind as long as a young mind attaches itself to spiritual idea. So if I remove that spiritual idea and then I still teach the religion, now my idea becomes the spirit. So the God becomes me because I'm the one who's now validating these different religions. Oh, Islam, Judaism. I'll tell you, well, there's big three: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. You know, I'm telling you what the three major religions are. And I'm telling you what they represent without any mention of the word God or any mention of the word spirit. That within itself is me fashioning myself as your God that sits above all of these world religions. I hope that makes sense to you all.
Definitely. I mean, to a certain degree.
Yeah. I mean, when you fix it up, you clean it up.
Yeah, but yeah, give thanks for that for sure. It's sort of like basically not big. I hate using that word. It's like trying to reduce what I deserve. Yeah, reduce what I deserve. Yeah, basically you say it, but nah, it's like you're invading someone's subconscious and you're trying to section off what they're allowed to tap into and pull from. You know, like even when you're talking about the religion, you know, you taught us that religion is to bind back, but it's binding back to what? It's supposed to be binding back to your source, but now I'm binding you back to me. So anytime something goes wrong in your life, you don't look to the Most High, you look to the state. You know, oh, I need a loan, I need a place to stay, I need a loan, or I need help defending myself from someone else. So I'm going to call the state, who can only really come by and clean up afterwards anyway.
Right. It's the Hegelian dialectic. You know, I'm going to cause this problem, and then I'm going to come in as the savior of said problem that I caused. So one of the things that school does is it removes individualism. And you again do that. Like each individual religion has its own God, but we won't talk about God. We'll just talk about the traditions of the religion. Well, this one, you know, at this time of year, they put up Christmas trees. This one, they light candles and that. And what happens is when you do that, now if I stand up as a child and say, well, I want to be this religion, I want to be Muslim, or I want to be Jewish, or I want to be whatever, now it becomes laughable. Because you're like, well, why would you want to be that? That's stupid. It's just a bunch of traditions and religions, but there's no real true value in So it's almost embarrassing. We use terms like religious fanatics. It's okay to be a fanatic because the word fan is short for fanatic. So I could be a fanatic of some music artists. That's perfectly acceptable. I could be a fanatic of some actor. That's perfectly acceptable. But I can't be a fanatic for spirituality. So there's different terms that are used like that, again, to shame you. And like I said, it removes the individualism. The whole process of school is about, like I said, in that last Shema, it's standardization. I have to create this uniform person, this uniform mind. Everyone's got to be the same. And I got to remove your personal connection to your God or your personal connection to your spiritual system, which most likely was given to you by your parents. But part of my job is to undermine your parents. And it goes to something as simple as this in school. This is like one of the starts of it. So you might be, it's a couple things, right? In school, you will accept the idea that some people have a math mind, like I have a math brain. They're just really good at mathematics. They're really good at geometry, calculus, whatever. And some people don't. They're just not good at that. So they focus more on maybe, instead of going towards like mathematics and science and engineering, they go more towards English, social studies, things like that. There's no such thing as that. There's no such thing as a math brain. That's just something that they make up in school. But there's no such thing, because it's okay for me to go to school and be horrible at math and barely pass my math classes, and when I get out of them, barely be able to do computations. But it's not okay for me not to be able to read. Like, why can't I have the same level of leniency when it comes to reading and writing? Oh, I don't have an English brain. I don't have a writing brain. So hey, you know how it is. That's part of the standardization. Well, we need you to be able to read signs. So we're not going to accept that in that area. Another thing is where they create the standardization, where they remove individualism, is the amount of time. Like, I'm someone, as a child, I always loved to read. I love to read now. And most of the time, I couldn't put a book down. I didn't do homework and stuff. I never did. I didn't do homework in college because I don't believe in it. I didn't believe in it back then. I don't believe in it now. Screw your homework. But I'm going to get all A's on the test anyway, so it doesn't matter. So, but I would read a book. I'm going to read my book, right? You know what I'm saying? I never even carried a book bag. But I might have a book, you know what I mean? But I ain't carrying a book, but none of that, because most time mess up my outfit anyway. So the thing about it is, why can't I read my book all day in school? You think about it, like even now as an adult, when you're really trying to focus your energy into something and really learn something, you might say, hey, I'm going to take the next 2-3 days and just learn how to do this thing. Whatever it is. But when you're in that space, you get 40 minutes, then that Pavlov's, bell goes off. 40 minutes, got to go to my next class. Close your books, we're going to go to the next thing. But I was really focused on this, and maybe I need a little extra time to focus on this. But you're telling me that if I can't figure this out in 40 minutes, now I got to go figure it out when I go home. But you done broke up my whole rhythm. Maybe it takes me an hour just to get warmed up, to get into what we're working on. It may take this kid over here 10 minutes, but it takes my child 30 minutes. But you standardize even when I should learn, even things down to this. Why is it that when we're in a class together, everyone's got to be around the same age? That's stupid. My daughter, when she was 4 years old, I had her reading on a 6th grade level. So because I homeschooled my children, everybody learned in one room together. Because if I have a child who can fly through her worksheets, I'm giving her the worksheets for the 1st grade level. So she's flying through them. Why would I keep her back when she's ready to do 6th and 7th grade work? Why would I keep her back and say, well, hey, you're 4 years old. First of all, you're 4. You're not even supposed to be learning anything. But let's just say if she was 7 or 8, you're supposed to just be able to do this. And it's something as simple as this. It's just so much to this, man. I don't want to go off too much, but something as simple as this. I'm going to tell you one of the stupidest things in school that we do to children to extract that individuals, and it creates bad expectations while we're usually screwed up as adults, which is what made me say I need to do this podcast. You know, in school, when you have a question about something, you have to ask a question to ask a question. You know how dumb that is? If I have a question, I have to raise my hand and get permission to ask the question. That's stupid. I already got the question. That's like you telling me I got to get ID to get ID. If I have ID, I don't need ID. You see what I'm saying? So I got to ask a question to ask a question. And what happens is when I ask a question to ask a question, I have to wait for the teacher to tell me when it's okay for me to receive my answer. That's insane. You see, now these are subtle things that we don't think of because we're so indoctrinated and we're damaged by these things. So now what happens is this. Now you're an adult. You get someone like me in your face saying, hey, you know, you need to have your own business. What is the first thing you do? Well, yeah, man, I need to go get licensed. I need to go get certified. I need to go take some classes on that. Why? Because I need to get permission to go on this quest. Because I've been programmed into always getting permission to pursue the things that I'm curious about. I don't go straight to it. And that all started in school with just someone that's telling you, raise your hand if you have a question. And then I'll get to you when I get a chance. And then sometimes the teacher doesn't even get to you. Oh, there's the bell. So, hey, can you hold that till tomorrow? Now I'm learning and functioning and cognating and evolving on the time of one person who may actually be slower than me. Just because they're an adult doesn't mean that they're smarter than me. And that creates an adult now who's afraid to start a business, who's afraid to pursue anything in life because they feel like they always have to get some kind of permission, whether it's a certification, a stamp, someone says, okay, you can do this now, you can do that, or, you know, come studying with me and this, that, as opposed to, you know what? We're in the era of YouTube. I can go on YouTube and figure out how to do eye surgery. I don't need you. I go to YouTube, figure out how to pull my own tooth. I don't have to wait for you anymore. But we don't capitalize on that because we've been school damaged and we still think we need permission to do whatever we want to do. And that correlates to taking prayer out of the schools and keeping religion, but taking the God out. Because if these children still had a connection to their gods, they'd be like, well, I already was given permission to go do this. I was already given permission to be fruitful. I was already given permission to study. Well, now I don't have to wait for the teacher. I don't have to wait for a human to tell me that I can evolve. I know I went all over the place with that, man, but yeah, that's something that it annoys me. I hate to see people damaged by these insane institutions.
I see you, Sister Yumino. You good? It's all you.
Yeah, it sounds like this. I would never share this in class because my thoughts would probably not be validated or considered. But it sounds like a mathematic equation. Like they took away math, or they like kind of separated math into this having a math mind, but they're using mathematics in psychology. You know, my thought hasn't fully formed yet, but as Chief is speaking, it's like a whole mathematical equation used against children. So I just wanted to share that.
You're absolutely right. No, you said it exactly right. But it's so insane, you're having trouble getting it to come out of your mouth. because it's just that, like, did I just say what I think I just said? Yeah, you did, and that's exactly what's happening. Because when you're learning mathematics, science, any subject from the perspective of your enemies who are seeking to extract you and pull you away from your spiritual power, they're always going to teach one side of it. Mathematics, you don't learn chemistry. I didn't teach my children chemistry when we homeschooled. We had one class, alchemy. Why would I take the owl off? The owl is the whole spiritual part. Or just like if I'm teaching you math, I have to teach you abstract theorems. Because if I only teach you one side of math, then you don't know the invisible parts of math. When you say something like E equals MC squared, show me energy. You see, so that already right there, we all know that formula. There's an abstract aspect to that formula, but we just kind of skip past that. So yeah, that sort of thinking is used. It's weaponized against our children. And like I said, these are the things that cause us to break down later in life. You know, not just in the sense that something like this. You talk about the psychology. Psychology itself is spirituality, coming from the goddess Psyche. Psyche had the ability. Psyche was in love with Eros. Eros is where you get erotic love, and Psyche was said to have the ability to touch the soul or to touch the unseen. So when you study psychology, what you're doing is you're supposed to. Psychology itself is a religious cult. It's classified technically as a religion. So when you are practicing psychology, you are supposed to be touching someone's soul. Now, how the heck can you touch somebody's freaking soul? Something you didn't even create. You don't know nothing about nobody's damn soul. Excuse my language. You don't know about nobody's soul. You see what I'm saying? But you're using this type of technology and science against children. So there's psychological infusion in everything that happens, but it's not a psychology that works for you or that's put right in front of you. Right? Here's a simple one right here. We're told that the government is for the people, by the people. Okay, cool. I mean, we know it's garbage, but let's just say, right? You talk about the things the expectations in school. You're expected to not know any. You're expected to walk through life confused. The government is for the people, by the people. Why don't we teach children how to choose political candidates? Like, why don't you teach children? Why don't you have somebody from the FBI come into school for career day and like a negotiator or someone or an interrogator? Teach children how to read body language. Teach children how to tell when someone's lying to them. Here's an easy one. Why don't you teach children how to vote? Like, how do you actually work the machine? Where do you go? You know, but then on top of that, how do I choose a candidate? How do I know who's right, who's wrong? What? You're not going to teach them anything like that because now you're dealing with the abstract psychology. How am I going to read energy? Teach children how to read energy. You know it's a real thing because the government uses it when they hire negotiators and interrogators. They have whole books and protocols based on body language. Because they recognize that only 17% of your communication is what comes out of your mouth. 83% of it is nonverbal. So there are body cues, but there's other energetic cues. So you're acknowledging that there's an unseen reality, but you're weaponizing that against the children and not teaching it to them. So when you come out of school or whatever, your expectations are, I'm an idiot. I'm going to stay in it. Like I said, how is it that a person could go through 18, 19 years of schooling and not be able to homeschool their children? That right there is a warning sign for you right there. I've just gone through this and I don't know what to do. I can't even teach what I supposedly just learned because I didn't learn anything. Only thing what happened during this period was I was standardized, like a car part or something else. I was standardized. You know, raise your hand, walk on the left side, pledge allegiance to the flag. All these different things, these standard motives, but there was no individualization because that would be the spiritual aspect of education. You know, and that can't happen because if I create individuals, then I'm going to create free thinkers. If I create free thinkers, then I'm going to create people who can exert that thinking onto the external reality, as opposed to asking me permission if they can exert their reality, you know, onto the external. You got to get a permit for permission. You got to get a permit to hunt. To feed your family, you got to get permission. To get married, you got to get a license. And this mentality and thought starts when you're in school and you're told, raise your hand if you got a question. I'm you.
Yeah, man, for sure. All great points, you know.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, man, for sure. I used to.
I like. Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, go ahead. That's Brother
All
Hamza.
right, first, shalom to the space, shalom to the space.
Peace.
Yeah, Chief, you went off then. You know what I'm saying? You did your thing then, but I talked to you, Sham the Joy. I don't know what your, you know what I mean. I don't know if you being your radio personality sometimes still, or do you switch over? I don't know.
He just don't remember your name. That's all.
Right?
Just say it like it is, bro.
All right, keep it right now. Tell her what name she wants me to use.
Yeah.
Just to share, man. The first thing I thought about when you was about to share is Jenga, right? Because I'm thinking, yo, the outside culture, they see what the mind is and what its possibility is, right? So they look at the mind as a Jenga stack, and then they begin to, take pieces out of the Jenga stack and now create our mind to what it is that best serves them. And so it's like I can feel what you're saying, because it's like sometimes the whole fight is because like you're just trying to put the Jenga cubes back together of the mind, like little fractions, and you don't begin to realize like, yo, they did this from when you was in school from way back. They've been taking Jenga pieces out of you. You feel me? And it's like to be empowered now. It's like you can realize and you can see at levels, because at each level you can realize they took a Jenga stack, and then when you're starting to put it back into your mind and you're putting these pieces, like at each level you can start to see where you have to develop, and you can see where you don't or you're not developed that, right? And you're trying to replace these things. And I just want to give thanks for the share. My nephew is doing my nephew deal, whatever. Right? So yeah, whatever. All right, thanks for the space. Yeah, shalom. I do. You know what?
Well, what's your nephew trying to express right now? What?
I don't know. He just started pointing at me when I was talking about some weirdness, and he's trying to get attention. So yeah, I'm gonna give him a little bit real quick.
Wants to join the bill.
Yeah, man, you got something to say. Hey, yo, Dre.
Yeah, he just learned how to say 3, man. You better say that good. So we're gonna he'll be on his way to give him a few more years.
Yeah, so man, there's a lot that my mind started jumping to. First thing is it just when I was hearing some of the saying that you can learn to be smart and you can learn to be dumb. And when one is that saying that if you try to judge a fish by the way that it climbs a tree, then it's always going to think that it doesn't measure up. And then it's going to walk out into society thinking that it is no good, thinking that it has no purpose, that it has no belonging in a sense. But then I also, on the flip side of that, when I was even thinking of, making sure that one raises their hand, and then it started making me think of, in a setting, how does one ultimately look at being efficient, or does one now look at being effective? And dealing with people, I mean, in order to be effective, you got to take your time with them. But in a setting as well, it's like, okay, how do we try to get all of these different points in? Now one is trying to be efficient and get as much as you can, but then like, depending on however long the class period is, to move, which they started moving some of them around with 90 minutes, and then it was like, that's too long. Some of them should be 60 minutes, whatever the case may be. Which then it's like and then it started making me think of passing around the bucket where some was just gonna spill out. Right? If there's a bucket filled with water, some of it is not gonna make it, and it just makes you think some of them ain't gonna make it. And even in the sense of when I was thinking like a family trust, And in family trust, you still have to, I'm guessing, one would have to ask for permission before I just give you this money for you to trick off or you to just blow, right? And if I was running a society, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes, I would want somebody before you can trick off your life or before you do something that is destructive, in a sense. I'm guessing I would want for you to, like, somebody who is ahead of you to help you to make a better decision or to lean on those who are in front of you. Now, I don't know if that's what is being conveyed. I mean, but in a sense, I think that's what I would want, per se.
Well, let me ask you this, Zach. What were you curious about as a child?
As a child, just playing, recess.
Mm-hmm. So physicality.
Yeah.
Okay, and you went on to be a professional athlete.
Correct.
Right. And you are one of those people who are school traumatized. Because whenever I tell you you need to go back to school, get your master's, you start tap dancing. Yeah, learn to do dance. Check it out.
Well, it's the vibration of the spirit, brother. That's what I like to dance.
Waking up the Kundalini, man. It's hot here. So that's because you've been traumatized because you were in an environment, and I'm going on based on what you were saying. Why didn't somebody capitalize on your curiosity and your learning style and say, okay, this young man right here, this is how he rocks. And he may excel, he might, it's kinesthetics. He may be a highly physical learner, but mostly, more important than that, this is what he's curious about. And as children, as people, we all come to the planet with natural curiosity because we're explorers. Like every single child has it. Like there's no fat, lazy babies. There may be fat ones, but even the fat ones want to go out. You know what I mean? You look at boys in the hood. Doughboy was out there with football, but he was twice their size, but he still wanted to be outside because we come to the planet to explore. The first thing we want to do as children is crawl all around. That's why the parents got to put up gates all over the place. I don't go down there. Don't go fall down the basement steps. Stuff like that. So we have these natural curiosities, and what happens is when you get into those environments where you're speaking about, well, I want you to have this and want you to have that, those curiosities are dulled and deadened. You start to see the brightness in a child's eye start to leave, that twinkle. It starts to dull out because you're ignoring their curiosity. And even if their curiosity has something to do with what you're teaching, you kill that by saying you got 30 minutes to learn it. And I may be curious about history. I may be curious about mathematics, but I want to learn my history and mathematics through music. But you won't let me do that. I have to learn it the way you want me to learn it. So therefore, I start to lose my explorer spirit, which at the end of the day, think about it. For those who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, you're trying to find that spirit again. That's why you be sitting there 40, 50 years old talking about, I don't know my life purpose. I don't know what I'm here to do. I wish I went out and did more. I wish I was more courageous and all. You were already that. And because someone said, like you said, well, I want you to know this and know that. Why do you want me to know this and know that? Because you want me to take over the reins of serving your society. But if that part was ignored and we said, if we focus on the child's curiosity and their explorer spirit and how they learn, we're really focusing on the divine part of them. And everything's going to work out all right because we're focusing on their spirit. We don't come around to that until, usually 40s. And why? Because in the 40s, your midlife crisis is engineered. By the time you get to that age, you realize how damaged you are. You don't know why you're damaged. And you start saying, well, I want some freedom. I'm not happy. I want something that's going to make me, let me get a car, let me get a new wife, new husband, new haircut, whatever the heck it is. I'm trying to find that happiness again. And it's very difficult to trace back. Like, just like when I just asked you, what were you curious about as a child? You really had to think about it. Because it's been so long, like they started ruining that in you when you were real young. All right, time to come in from recess. Why can't you play all day? Because you playing all day may have turned you into one of the greatest artists. Because as an artist, you have to learn human anatomy. If you're going to be drawing knees and arms and hands the right way. And maybe you playing outside all day would have taught you something about anatomy and how it works. Because that's where your curiosity and your energy was. But no, come in, sit down right next to the girls, even though we function completely different in these hard chairs, and let's go over something that you don't care anything about, that you'll never really be able to relate to, but I'm just told I got to teach you. And the truth of it is this: when you are schooling your children right properly, they should do whatever they feel like doing every day. They should wake up like, all right, what do you feel like learning today? Well, I'm going to keep reading my book. Okay, cool. I saw some interesting grass down by the water. I want to go look at that grass. Put it under the microscope. They're going to come up with way cooler curriculums than you could come up for yourself. But when you put them inside of that environment for more than a couple of years, that's when the laziness comes in, because you traumatize them out of learning. They're terrified of school. They want to do whatever they can to get away from school and learning. I'm muted again.
That kind of reminds me of when they block, or at least in university and college, some programs are blocked from others. Like, I think the medical program medical students can't study astrology, and I found that interesting. Like, it's that mathematical equation, warfare again. Like, there's certain branches that they try not to intertwine, because then you discover the truth.
That's an excellent point, because who are you to freaking tell me what I can't study and I'm paying my money? And because you're trying to shape what the heck I'm supposed to be. Maybe I'm going to be something that hasn't been yet. Because isn't that the whole point in having new babies? So we can make new stuff? Like that within itself is insane. Like, I can't take this course or take that course if I'm enrolled in this school of study. Like that's a part of what we're talking about. And what that is I'm standardizing. If I'm in medical school, I'm standardizing the thought of someone who's in mental. I'm sorry, someone who's in the medical field. That's why you think about, again, the God that's created. That's what we were talking about before. It's going to be my last point that I just like. You got to understand, for the work that I do, I deal with this every single day. Every single day. Whenever I get a client or even someone that I knew, and I'm talking to them and I'm giving them the answers, look, this is what you need to do, this, that. And you can see the fear on their face. I know where that fear, I know where it started. I know where that warfare started, but yeah, just that concept. I don't even remember my point I was going to make, so I'm going to mute out anyway. But, just the point I'm saying, really that standardizing of the human thought and creating that deity. That's what I was kind of saying. Because, like, if you look at what's been going on with what I call the scientific tyranny, right? Because we got all of these, polio is back. They say monkeypox is about to be the new HIV. All that cool stuff they're giving us, right? Now, in the beginning, they kept saying things like, well, you have to trust the science. The science tells us this. The science tells us that, right? But see, when you're free, you learn how to listen. Me, I know how to listen. I listen to the smallest things. You ain't getting nothing past me. And I noticed, like, over the course of months, they stopped saying trust the science, and they started saying we have to trust the scientists. Now, you can't tell me that wasn't thought about 3-4 years ago. Before a lot of this stuff was engineered. Trust the science. Trust the science. I don't know the freaking science because you didn't teach me the science properly. Well, then trust the scientist. Well, now you've deified them. There's no show and prove there. I have to just trust whatever they're saying. You see, that's the extraction of the God out of it. Because I can't go learn the science for myself, which is similar to what you're saying.
So it's almost like, what I'm thinking, it's like school give you freedom of expression, but not free will, in a sense. Where you can express yourself how you want to express yourself. If you want to be a fairy today, you can be that. If you want to feel like you have ovaries when you have something else, you can do that. It's just a matter of when you start to really think, then now that becomes problematic. And it also made me think of, even though, like, okay, if somebody could do whatever they wanted to, like, isn't there a time though with people you gotta stay on topic? And I'm only saying that because even in the sense where we're sometimes on here and might be talking in one direction and somebody will come in, oh, okay, I hear what y'all saying, but I want to know about this. Hold on, man. Get with the flow of the group.
Yeah, but that's getting with the spirit of the group. You know what I mean? Like, that's somebody, the spirit of the group, we may go, think about when we was at the retreat and we was jamming, we was doing music, right? Mm-hmm. We went through all different chambers, man. Sometimes it was offbeat, sometimes it was on beat, sometimes vocally, notes was on, not no song, but we were all in the same spirit. You know what I'm saying? Hey, man, it was late at night, dude, and that smoke kept blowing in my face. That smoke from the fire was going out of my throat. That's how I was hitting on them off notes. But you know, so the thing is, but we were all in the same spirit. Like when you say, okay, in school you're free to express yourself, but you're only expressing yourself within the veins of one spirit. Because I can't, like, we'll never have another Macho Man Randy Savage. If y'all even know who that is. You know what I mean? Like,
that's my dog right there. I grew up watching wrestling.
You know what I'm saying? That was my man back in the day. You know what I'm saying? My freaking Jake the Snake. You know what I'm saying? He used to bring Elizabeth in. He was rough on Elizabeth. Shut up. Go over there. Sit. Go on. Oh, God, Jake the Snake. Yeah, he treated Elizabeth rough. You know what I'm saying? You know, and Macho Man would come in, brother, you better treat that girl, right? You know, like, yeah, man, Macho Man. You know what I'm saying? Coco be weird, junkyard dog. I mean, that ain't got nothing to do with it.
You're going down a different street.
Yeah, I'm going out of here.
Give it the group, brother.
The British Bulldogs and the Figure Four. Oh, man.
I just used to like Sting with that steel bat.
Yeah, with the but you know what I'm saying. But my point is, I'm saying, metaphysically speaking, that the expression that we're calling free ain't free because it's programmed expression. Because, like, even me, I'm free. I mean, I don't give a crap. But, you know, there are certain structures that if I start to really express the value and the beauty of being, again, a real penis owner, man, I will be suppressed. However, if I came out tomorrow and said, hey, you know, I like a little ding dong on the side, then I'll all of a sudden get a whole bunch of support. I don't know how to even say it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? However, I would say it. I don't see myself saying it any different than that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
don't worry, they'll teach you. They'll scoop you up. You can get them coaching sessions.
But I know it was my family. I know that I had to be like, look, hey man, I'm the top. So y'all even ask. I'm still the dude.
So you start walking around wearing flannel.
Looking like Queen team with Cleo and set it off. But you know, so that's the thing. It's like, but why am I supported with things that are disruptive to the nuclear family model? That's when it seems like I can express myself as freely as I want. I mean, look at something like this. We talk about free expression, right? So some years ago, if I worked in coach or whatever, worked in kind of any sort of institution where there were children, and I told little boys to sit on my lap, right? I mean, what's the thoughts that come to your mind? Like, this is somebody who's maybe a deviant, someone who's molesting children, so forth and so on, right? And again, I mean, I don't have to say any disclaimers, but I'm just going to say, you know, this is not an attack, but this is an observation of an attack. Because the attack already started. At this point, we're defending. So if I'm a big old burly grown man like I am, big old beard and all that, going to school, say, hey, little boy, come sit on my lap. We got an issue. Now, what if I go put a wig and a dress on? All of a sudden, it's acceptable. You see? And I might say, hey, but freedom of expression, right? It's cool now. These are the things that I'm saying we have to look at when we say we're free to express ourselves. I don't think so in those environments. That's not what that spirit is leaning itself towards.
So it's more so freedom to support an agenda than it is freedom to express yourself.
Right. If you rip this nuclear family model to shreds, I'm with you. You know, I'm completely with you. If you're a Gabrielle Union, you know, we'll shoot you straight up to the top. You know, anybody who's down to destroy, if you're a Jada Pinkett, we'll shoot you straight to the top. You know, or a softy like a Will Smith or a softy like a Dwayne, will push you straight to the top. But if you're somebody like, who was it recently? Macy Gray. Well, I put that post up and was like, yeah, you know, it takes more to be a woman than just that.
Mm-hmm.
We got an issue now. She's crazy. I'm canceling her. I used to be a fan. Da, da, da. But this is a woman telling you that. But she's not free to express tenets of her own womanhood. She's a woman. And she can't speak on being a woman. Well, she can, but, you know, not without retribution.
Right. And that makes me think about, too, in terms of the expectations that are placed on you. Like, you say that you're doing something, and people automatically go to certain questions. Like, that's the only way you can do it. So if someone says, oh, I don't know, I'm getting married. Oh, how much did you pay for the ring? How much did the wedding cost? And it goes back to, again, that supporting that agenda. When you're speaking about even the historical nature or the agenda of education, it made me think about back in like the 20s and 1920s, where they had this boom in advertisement, right? Going back in the advertisement history. And one of the major influential figures back then was Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays. They call him Eddie Bernays. And he was instrumental in a lot of techniques that are used for programming now. He has a book that he wrote called Propaganda. And he used to get advice from Sigmund Freud about how people's subconscious work, even with the idea of women smoking cigarettes, you know, and it wasn't because women wanted to be more powerful. It was because, well, they took advantage of it. They exploited it. But cigarette companies were like, it's frowned upon for women to smoke cigarettes. So we losing half our demographic. You know, just like only heterosexuals getting married. So we losing half our market. You know, let's bump the numbers up. They still got to pay for the marriage license, but it's the same thing. So he cooked up this thing where a bunch of well-known women or daughters of well-known people would basically light up cigarettes all at the same time. And he already told the press ahead of time that it was going to happen. So everybody wanted a picture, so they were lighting up quote unquote torches of freedom, to show their freedom as women to do what they wanted to do. All of a sudden it starts showing up in movies. Every 2 seconds, a woman puts a cigarette in her mouth and her man rushes to light it. Well, before that, it was frowned upon for a woman to even think about smoking or be around someone who was smoking. So you're programmed to respond to something in a different way. Whereas, like in your subconscious mind, you didn't even know why it was frowned upon for women to smoke. So I don't see no reason why women can't smoke, because you weren't standing on nothing before, and because you're constantly being stripped of those principles and those morals, like the family, like what a man is or what a woman is. You're constantly going to just acquiesce to whatever the crowd is doing. You're constantly going to, like, I kind of made my face up when you probably see it on YouTube when Aki Zaka is like, why don't you just go with the group? It's like, I'm going away from the group. I understand where you're coming from, Aki Zaka, but I always avoided the group because I was like, that's dangerous to be around a bunch of people, because it's so easy to get caught up in that energy and move with that flow if you surround yourself with people, even if you say you disagree with them. So that's what I wanted to add on to that, Bill.
That was an important point that you just gave, because it shows the connection between like the psychology or the psychoanalysis and consumerism, and how that ties into politics. With the Edward Bernays piece, that was a really important include, because of course that has to do with even what's in the vending machines in schools and things like that. Because that campaign you're talking about, they had these posters up. This is like around 1930, 1929. Lucky Strike had these posters up called Torches of Freedom. And the Torches of Freedom, they were relating to, of course, the cigarettes. And they even had a parade that they did around that time. And the parade was the Torches of Freedom, and it represented women regaining or taking the power from men at that time, which of course the cigarette was supposed to be male power. It's no different than like when you look at the Matrix. I know that one now. I know. But who had the cigarette in the Matrix? The Oracle. So that's what that was representative of, was her actually having that male power. And if you know who the Wachowskis are, then you'd understand what that represented. But there was all these did for it was a packing company. I think the Beach Nut or the Beach Hill Packing Company, where they had this other campaign that they did around bacon, and that's where you got the phrase. They started saying that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and have a big breakfast and stuff like that, because they were losing all this money on bacon. They couldn't sell bacon, and in order to increase the sales of bacon, they came out with these ads saying that not only did they started doing coupons and stuff like that, but they said that they started saying that doctors recommend that a person not eat a light breakfast, but rather eat a hearty breakfast. And that doctors and physicians were recommending this. They came up with these fake stats and stuff like that, and it was saying that it would be better to, instead of drinking orange juice for breakfast, to have toast and coffee and bacon. And this was to sell these particular products, and of course they threw eggs in there as well, because all of these other industries got in on the game. And this was Edward Bernays who designed this actual campaign around this. So even today, people are, you got to eat big breakfast, you got to have breakfast. That came from people trying to sell bacon.
Exactly. Once you know where it comes from, you can sort of, like you said, you can source it. Once you can source it, you know where to move, and you know how to listen because you've heard. I've heard this one before, So it's like, and he worked on a lot of political campaigns too. He was actually the one who made it popular for celebrities to visit the White House. So you'd see all of calming them and meeting Barack Obama and stuff like that. That was him, because there were certain presidents. I can't remember the president's name, the particular one, but he was like, his public image was that he was so dull that we need to show him around exciting people. You know, this is the person who also was instrumental in individualism when it comes to advertising or product placement too. Like a lot of advertisers were mobilized like an army because the U.S. realized they weren't like making money on production; they were actually overproducing. So we need more consumers. So just like watching how the culture of the country evolved lets you know what their agenda is, and what phase they're in. So understanding the history of that, it really helps you to know what's expected of you versus what's really going on.
I just add to what the statement Chief had made about the food, man. The other day I was riding in the car with my brother, and I was like, "Yo, man, I got a taste for like breakfast pieces in school." He's like, "Breakfast pieces in school." I'm like, "Yeah, man, I don't know where that comes from." I like, man, I just got a taste for that breakfast piece, and then even to the point where I just started to describe it with my mind. I feel like, "Yo, I can still have an urge for this thing that I was given like." What 24 years ago, right? This is a piece of like, I'm like, yo, so it's like the memory of a child to be able to hold on to certain tastes and smells and certain environments for extended periods of time. It says like how long it continuously negatively affect you if you're still having like cravings that are from 20 plus years ago, and we see how it plays out into our life, even just with our natural health.
Yeah, it also plays out. That's a great point, brother. It also plays out with, certain feelings you may have had in school that you didn't necessarily work through. Because school is a master place. School is like jail, basically. Like it was easier for me to see it that way because it's based off an industrial model. Like Chief was saying, all the children are batched, like data manufacture. You're batched together that way. You have the industrial belt that when it's time to go on break or when it's time to move from place to place, and you're being shuffled through just so you can follow orders, basically. So, like Chief was building on too, you don't necessarily learn anything, but you sat there and did it. That's the important part. It's not that you learn anything, but I told you to sit down and take these notes, even though you got the book right there. Why I got to write it out if I got the book? That's stupid. I used to hate taking notes in school because we have the book here and we could spend time going over the book. You want me to sit here with someone typed, right? With someone typed,
And in the back of the book, the answers are in the back of the book.
But you can't look,
You can't look.
and you can't cheat. But now everybody's collaborating, when they get out of school. But you can't cheat while you're in school, But yeah, it has a lot of traumatizing memories for a lot of people, and they still like it defines how they move through their day. It's similar to what I was doing on early in the beginning, but I was like, you sometimes judge yourself based on who you were like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and you don't realize like you've moved beyond that person, but there's a part of you that's still stuck there. So it's almost like you gotta go back, like that's some go for bird. You gotta go back and retrieve what was lost, or retrieve what was left behind. And working through that is difficult because it's not necessarily something that people like to talk about unless they're trying to sell you unless they're in the psychology business and they're trying to sell you something like that. or they just want a trauma bond. Yeah, that happened to me too, and that's it. That's as far as that goes. Yeah, that sounds familiar. But that's as far as it goes. You don't really get to the bottom of it, and very few and far between say we shouldn't let this happen to these children. I know, like, you have parents who say, I know school can be difficult sometimes, but you gotta do it. Really? I have to? It boggles my mind sometimes based on my experience when I read or I watch certain videos, and there are people who are traveling the world, husband and wife with daughters in tow or sons in tow, and they're doing, like, they're studying, but they study for a couple hours a day, and the rest of the time they're exploring. Their parents are sailing around the world, going to different countries. You learn a bunch of different cultures, different languages. You got to know how to count. You got to know how to measure distance just from the fact that you're always traveling. How far are we from the last place we were? Different things like that. Like, life teaches you, and as long as you just help that, as long as you're there to help that along, that learning process along, and not really impede it, children will learn. Children, we try to stop children from learning. How many people have to watch them out around other people's children? It's like, I'm gonna teach him something he shouldn't know, because they always pick up on the quote unquote worst stuff because they know. I think Chief you had mentioned, like, they pick up on the curse words because they know there's a power in it. Like, I can't curse around no one because you don't want to talk until I say hit my toe or step on a Lego, and all of a sudden you want to repeat everything you just heard. Yeah, man.
So, make sure I walk with everybody here. It would be safe to say then, hopefully y'all understand what I'm saying, is though one can put on any type of clothes to cover themselves, and they all can go together in the expectation, the reality is one shouldn't mix fabrics, in a sense. Where if some things are innately in a group of people that have to be taught to another group, then when you mix fabrics, then one starts to take on the consciousness of a different group, which therefore then starts to dwindle them down to next to nothing. Am I saying this correctly?
Make sure I'm hearing you correctly, brother. All right. So when you say one shouldn't mix fabrics, are you referring to not mixing systems or cultures or thoughts? Cultures.
Because if everybody innately, it's almost like the nature versus nurture, right? And if you got to teach somebody not to kill, now my mind goes back to the quest for fire, right? And if you have to tell somebody that, then what ultimately is running through a certain group of bloodline. And then when you mix those, then you take on the consciousness of another group. No.
I would say you can learn to. Oh, I'm sorry. You were still going. But go ahead, brother.
Oh, nothing. I was just gonna say. So your expectation is we're all the same, but the reality is we're not.
Chief had said we're different on the outside and we're different on the inside. But if we're different on the outside, we're different on the inside. You could say, don't go over there. You might turn into them, but you wouldn't turn into them unless you would like them in a certain sense. Like most of us are more like them. We are different. There's only so many things that are separating us or differentiating us. But ultimately, if you have your culture intact, you can move through a different culture and be respectful of their culture while still not getting off of your throne. So if someone says, "Oh, this is what we do here," and you say, "Oh, okay, we don't do that here. We don't do that where I'm from. So, oh, we eat pork here. You know, we just caught it too. It's wild boar." You might say, "No, thanks." You know, that's it. If you're moving through the space and you say, "This is the fabric that I wear," oh yeah, well you should try this on. This is the local fashion. Is it? No, thanks. It doesn't align with what I do. But it shouldn't stop you from like exploring. That's where you get back into that religious or churchical mindset where it's like, I'm not traveling further than my city block because I know that church is there and God is in church and God is all I need. You know what I mean? I don't need nothing else. So it's sort of like that. Like you can explore, and we're expected to like be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. We're expected to go everywhere. You know what I mean? But it's just this is how you move while you're on the planet. So you can move through without necessarily mixing fabrics. That's my perspective on it. I could be wrong. Throw that in again.
Now, wouldn't that though be under the assumption that one knows that they should eat pork? Like that's not innately in somebody to say if somebody puts a pork chop in front of them that I'm looking at that and saying that's not food.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't worry about mixing fabrics if you ain't got no, um, if you don't have any cultural standard to move by. That's what the that's what the system really is designed for. So you don't have anything that's expected of you. You don't have anyone expecting something from you. So when you go home, you don't have two parents who are balanced, who are expecting you to do great things and move in a certain way. You have one parent who's imbalanced and they expect you to cater to their ego, and you don't want to do nothing but find yourself back to the system. I'm gonna get my own place and get out of here so I can live my own life. It's sort of is that sort of thing. I don't want to be stifled, but I'll bind myself to a system that stifles me and gives me a treat for being an active participant in it. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, it would stifle you. I guess it's why I'm stuck. I'm guessing then it only would stifle you if you didn't already have an anchoring to who and what you were, right? But if you didn't have that within the system of saying somebody's going to a school, somebody hasn't told you this is this and this is that. So when you mix those two, now all of a sudden you take on the consciousness of something else, where now you take on bad habits. And now it's an unlearn to relearn, as opposed to if one wasn't never in that to begin with, then now you wouldn't have to be told not to do this and not to do that because now it's just a way of life.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, you're right. You wouldn't need someone to tell you, um, this is what you do or this is what you don't do. If you come up in a certain culture, if you come up in a certain knowing, if you don't come up in it, there's still certain things that are innately inside of you. It's like, I shouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean? Or you, at the very least, you in the middle of doing it, like, what's wrong with me? Or why do I, Chief said, why do I like this? Why is this the thing? So that could be a pitfall in itself because through that self exploration, you might be playing around in a messed up playing field, which is so why children need to be protected so much too, because like even at the retreat, um, two of the little girls were just playing in a pond. Like children have no problem with just playing in a pond. I was like, part of me was like, stop them. Another part was like, why is this pond so fascinating? You know what I mean? But how many other places are places where they really shouldn't be? But it's the environment, like it's where they are. You know, like you think about crack babies, born in that epidemic around that time. Like the things that they had as options were all like you had to really look to find something that wasn't infested with that in that time. And you may have had one or two people who were like, come here, we're going to the rec center, or come here, we're you coming with me, we're going to join the chess club, we're going to play sports, you know and people start to see that as like salvation. It's almost like a messianic type of experience where this person saved me from my environment. I could have been dead if it wasn't for this person, or I could have been strung out if it wasn't for this person. But they rescued you and threw you right back in the pond. They threw you right back into the system because the beast is just that. It's built that tight. Even if we miss you this way, we're gonna get you the next way. Which is why it's so dangerous. In my opinion, I'm not a licensed medical practitioner.
No, I'm walking with you. I'm walking with you. So in essence, then once you're in their exploration, there should be somebody to help guide that exploration. Because like even in a sense, if I'm looking at it today, one might explore and then they might hear something like "gotta eat the booty like groceries." Well, hold on, man. Like,
how? You be on a road trip and that's all you in the box seat. What the hell?
I like to add to the bit. I like to add another little piece to the bill. Like to what Aki Zach was saying, right? So it reminds me, like as Chief knows, like a martial artist, right? So when you're like studying with a sensei for a very long time, or a sensei or Sifu, right? They like own you in a sense. They like feel like they own you, right? But and then when they feel like you out like cheating on them, studying other arts and stuff, they be like, yo, you out there, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, they have also understanding of a higher God, knowing that through all the systems, you're going to find the one system that fits you. Because in the end, you have to become, the chief or the judgment, or you have to become that in which you're trying to manifest to what you can conceptualize, right? So if that person, you judge them by, okay, let's see how can they make what they are doing. It's kind of like we were having a bill yesterday in the men's cipher, right? Yesterday, and we were talking to one of the brothers, and they displayed a plan, and one of us was like, "Yo, I don't really get off with that plan, but if you can see it through, it's like great, cause I'm rooting for you to see it through, because that's what you know what I'm saying. You said in your mind that is possible for you to achieve. So at some point, it's like in the scripture we share it too, right? In 2 Samuel's chapter 4, verse 6, I believe, right? And he said in the end, you'll be able to manifest the truth. It's going to be the manifestation of the truth to the person. That's going to tell you whether or not you may be seeing two fabrics, because it may be two different colors, but those may be fabrics of the same cloth. Is one's experience out in the world, so you may see me in my geek in all white, and you may think that's something else, right? Because you just don't know that thing well enough. So we all have to explore, and we're all going to explore, and that's back like what Chief said, like children should be, led to explore what they're naturally gifted towards or going or gravitating to. So if they're gravitating to the pond, as Master Menelek said, we don't restrict it. You know what I mean? Because maybe later on in life, they may have an aquarium of their own where they're teaching our youth about what's actually in the pond. So, yeah, I just like to say that.
Yeah, man. As you were speaking, brother, too, there was a comment that I read in the chat from my Yuba. And by the way, feel free to jump in. This ain't like a panel of set people. You can jump in at any time and say your piece, you know. Mayuba says also with the Scantron test answering system, or when you have the bubble in the numbers, it created a robotic way of dealing with answers and questions. It was only when I had moved to the States that there was a bubbling system in my education. That always felt off-putting in my youth. Yeah, because I never studied when I knew it was multiple choice. It's like, I'll just look at the answers and the questions and figure it out. Y'all only give me so many answers. 2 to 1, the answer that I would have come up with ain't on the paper. So I may never get to really explore that thought pattern or that thought form. It's just like, you gave me, really, one of the answers you gave me is supposed to be a quote unquote right answer. The next answer is supposed to be close to it and throw me off. And the other two are to see if if I'm a dummy or not. That's really what you're saying. So it's like, okay, which one of these just looks right? As opposed to, let me think critically about this for a second. Usually when I sit and think critically, the answer ain't on the paper. And it's like, oh, but I see what you're trying to get me to say. So that was an interesting phenomenon. That was a good comment, Mayuba. Again, just raise your hand and you can speak.
Right, like even when and he's saying right, like somebody had a plan, and somebody was saying how that plan may not come to fruition. There's an expectation that one has in their own mind of how they see things, versus maybe somebody who has more experience can now give them a reality of what it is. So the whole thing about it is making new mistakes, but not creating the same mistakes. And if one is allowed to then, which some may need to fall flat on their face, but then some who fall on their face, it hardens them where they're damaged now and don't do anything because of that, because now their history now prevents them from expanding and growing. So does that now start to make that detrimental to one's progress from ultimately allowing them to do whatever they feel like?
It's their progress to lose. You can't overbear and throw into their environment. It's their progress to lose. Just as like it's their progress to gain if they're said gain. Right? So it's like I can't push and flex in and out your boundaries because I know maybe a truth that you don't or experience that you had that could cost you. Ultimately, when your father and brother, you're just like, yo, if you crash, I got you still. And it's not saying that you put your neck out for them. Nah, not that. But it's like someone has to be like, someone is going to be there. They're like, yo, watch over. Okay, cool. You know what I mean? Because essentially, we all going to crash. If somebody was ahead of us that say, like, all right, cool, we see you crashing, let me grab you by your belt and, like, pick you up, right? Like I used to do the jits back in the day. Let me grab you by your belt, give you a wedgie. Now that I had to come get you. Because now it's got a sting when I pick you up a little more. Maybe that's the experience some people have to have. Like, so it's both sides of the experience are for the chief to see. That's why, what people will see. It's like, all right, cool, maybe let them rock out like that and they crash a little bit because someone's going to learn like that. So it's like, if you're trying to stop them, then you're trying to stop y'all from even just like, yo, they need the experience like that. So at times, you have to also know when not to do anything or when to do something. Because that's ultimately the experience we're all going to go through. Especially if we're rearing children, as we should. We're going to have to be like, okay, when to step in, when to not step in, when is we're sensitive to know that this is their lesson to be learned. Because if you never get to that sensitive point, it's like, okay, then how do I judge when I, step in or when I step out? So, and that's all I'll say to that.
Right. I'm walking with you. Now, but my question is then, isn't there a time where you can't control the outcome, but if one gives you a plan and a plan that you already know, like, hold on, man, you might want to rework that plan. Do you not tell him or you just let him go and let it not work.
Are you not working the plan?
I'm confused.
Chief just said to you, I've been telling you to go to school for how long? Is that not you bucking the plan?
Yeah, but he told me.
And you didn't do it.
But he told me. That's not somebody sitting back and not saying something and just watching you screw up.
Okay. How many times is somebody gonna say something?
Right, but that's different. That's different than not saying something.
Okay.
Yeah, but nah. See, this is where you get in. See, this is y'all schooling kicking back in. No, y'all was.
Hey, SDFR, right? SDFR.
Because you're talking about standardization. Now you're talking about, well, aren't you supposed to do this? Aren't you supposed to do that? It depends on the person. That's standardization, right? And that's the thing. I know, for instance, I can joke with Zach and be like, yo, am I saying you're supposed to go to school? Let's go to school, right? I can do that with him, but I've told other people to do things that I know I can't joke about because I know the difference between those people. I know exactly why Zach does not want to go to school. And he's never told me that he doesn't want to go to school. But I know he doesn't want to go to school because I know him. You know, so it's even with the plan, you got to know, you have to have that sensitivity towards who needs what. Some children, you let them just roam. But the thing is, you got to look at the environment that they were gestated inside of. With freedom, like I always tell you, freedom is a destination. So yeah, if you take the average person, who's come up inside of this and say, okay, you're free, go do your thing. They're going to be like slaves who just got released off the plantation and don't know what to do, so they become sharecroppers. You see, so you can't, you have to take almost at an individual basis. Aki Hamza doesn't want to go to school either. But his reasons for not wanting to go to school are different than Zach's reasons for not wanting to go to school. But I have to know each one of them in order to give that proper guidance. Sometimes it's too much. It's like where they can't go do this, they can't go do that, they can't go do that. And that's where you study people. Whether I'm studying children or whether I'm studying our new members, y'all are getting studied. And I look at your natural curiosities. I look at some of the curiosities that you don't even realize you still have. And I try to expose you to experiences that pull that out more. And because y'all are adults, I don't even tell you when I'm doing it. Because your socialization has messed up your ego so much that if I told you I was doing it, you'd start going crazy. So I have to do things in a sly way. Whereas a child, I could be like, hey, what you like doing? Oh, I like playing checkers. Oh, you like playing checkers? Hey, let's go down to the wood shop and let's build you a checker set. You know, we can explore it openly and freely because there's no ego there. So yeah, you can't standardize like, this is when I give a plan. It doesn't work like that. It's different. And that's why parents need to have the energy and the time to raise their children properly, because it might require a high level of customization. And that even goes to thinking like, well, I want 10, 15 children. Can you really 10 or 15 different curriculums? Maybe you can only customize 2. Maybe you only need 2 children, because that's all you can handle, because it goes beyond just feeding and clothing them. Like they all eat the same thing. They can wear each other's clothes. But when it comes to education, very individual.
Noted.
Toda. Yeah, but that customization piece is key. Like you were saying, how you like to read. I used to get in trouble for it was weird because I didn't like taking notes, but at the same time, I used to like writing stories, and I would just sit there writing, and the teacher would be like, "The story is too long." I say, "But I didn't get finished." Like, man. So even with that stifling aspect, um, like I remember one speaker saying, people usually tell children like the children they would tell children don't be a artist or um don't try to be an artist or a dancer or a creative person or even someone who works with their hands. You should be a doctor or a lawyer. And it's like, based on what? Or based on who? you know we have doctors and lawyers, but the system is so messed up. If I become a doctor or a lawyer, I got to be corrupt or broke. So you ain't giving me too much options there. You need to tell me what are my options if I am a doctor or a lawyer. Don't just throw those two labels at me like they got some type of power, and now I gotta just bow down to that and drop whatever I know is precious to me, and I know is something that's bringing something out of me. I don't know what it is, but I don't know what it is, but I know it's something. But not having someone to say, "Oh, what do you like to do?" Going back to your question, like, exactly, what do you like to do? Oh, I like doing this. Oh, well, let's go build a checker set. You know, that could be similar to what you were talking about in terms of being in a certain environment and not necessarily having that guidance. Well, what are you going to do? Are you just going to do what's um, being done around you, or are you really going to have something inside of you that says, "This is what I like to do, and I'm going to do it"? You know, can you say that that's not stamped out, or if it is stamped out, then why is that being stamped out, and what are you trying to keep? Like, what are you trying to extract? Well, since ain't nobody got nothing else to say, does anyone else anything else to say? Any other comments or anything that they wanted to bring up in terms of expectations? What type of expectations they may have had, or what they expect from their strong coming up? What they expected from last strong, but it didn't happen the way you expected it. Or just the dangers of having expectations. No one speaks. All right. Give thanks to everybody for coming through on this midday motivation. Hopefully, it was edifying and motivational. And you're ready to tackle the strong. With renewed energy. Um, yeah. Willfully, it was empowering to you. And peace to you all. Give thanks for everybody who came through and who spoke. Yeah, peace to you.
If thanks is
Peace. Good thing, brother.
Peace.